Welcome along to the Matchbook NFL podcast. I'm your host, Daniel. It's hard to believe we are at the playoffs. There's only 4 weeks left of the NFL season, so enjoy the football as much as you can. Bringing in Judah, Sam, and Drew as always. They've only had one bye week between them, and that was Christmas. They had the week off. They absolutely smashed week 18. We had Judah and Drew landing their best long shots. We had Judah and Sam landing their best bets. Sam did his best to go through the card as well, so I think he was only one off doing that too. So there was plenty of winners over week 18. The guys are banging form. Won't dwell on that too much because people want to hear the playoff tips, but we do want to bring in the Super Bowl outright markets. And I'm going to bring you in, Drew, just to give people a little bit of advice. You don't have a pick per se, but a lot of people do like betting on the Super Bowl outright markets. I know I do, particularly before the playoffs. If I don't have anything to back at the moment, usually mine are in the bin, like the Chargers, for example, at big prices. But give people a bit of advice if they're playing in the markets and over the next few weeks to maybe get a little bit of an edge and back to lay options too on the matchup betting exchange.
Yeah, I guess I'll go first. So the the general philosophy I use for futures is pretty straightforward. I try to play during the preseason and during the regular season, mostly just trying to identify who's going to get the 1 seed. The win equity that you get from having a bye round 1 is pretty enormous, particularly since we've gone to this 7-team per conference format. And if you don't already have Niners, Ravens in pocket, believe me, the prices that you currently see reflect a lot of sort of the certainty that those teams are going to be in the mix, either hosting championship games or, in the case of the Niners, potentially, I could see a path where there's more chaos in the NFC. And that price gets shorter without them even playing a game. In general, if you're going to back a long shot or even one of the medium shots here in the market, my philosophy is largely take a swing on a team that has the potential to scoop equity independent of them beating a good team. So if you can find a 2 or 3 seed that you think has a reasonable path and you think the 1 seed is vulnerable to an upset, like let's say you don't believe Lamar Jackson has an MVP level playoff performance in him, maybe you want to take a swing on the likes of the Bills or the Chiefs. I personally have some Bills in pocket. I have Bills in pocket from a million years ago that was at a terrible price, and I added some Chiefs at week 18 level just because I thought there was a 30% chance the Bills weren't even going to be in the playoffs, and so I thought there was an equity scoop potential for the Chiefs at that time. But I think for the most part, if you have a long shot in mind, just keep in mind they're probably going to have to do it themselves. They're going to have to go, on the road and beat some good teams. And for those reasons, your opportunity to capitalize just playing them game by game is likely better than taking a futures price. At this point, if you can identify any of the likely winners like the Chiefs and you think there's a chance that the market could drastically upgrade them with a couple of impressive performances, then that's one other kind of strategy. But as we currently look at the landscape, I see things as a little bit flatter than the market does at this current moment. I don't have the Bills and the Cowboys as likely as this current pricing would suggest. But that said, they're still very good teams, and I think everything is pretty well priced at this point.
Okay, and those prices, incidentally, before I bring you in, Judah, Niners 3.4, current favorites on the matchup betting exchange, Ravens 4.3, the 2 1 seeds that Drew alluded to there. The next two Drew mentioned, Bills 8.0, Cowboys 9.4. If we go down the list further, the Chiefs, who would have believed this, 13.0 heading into the playoffs, Lions 25s, Eagles 29, Browns 34, and Dolphins 36, the Rams 48, which we'll get to in a sec, the Texans 80, Bucs 110, and we'll finish it with the Packers at 120 and the Steelers at 160. Judah, just a little bit of advice for punters. Would you tend to stay away from the outrights as well and go game by game?
I actually am fine with the outrights, and I'm only not betting myself because I already have kind of the exposure deeper out. But I think the question you'd want to ask is effectively if everything goes right, aka if we're going to hit the right tail of the distribution, kind of like how high is the upside? So, and maybe I'll really eat these words, but like even if everything goes right for the Buccaneers, they don't kind of have the upside of a team like the Rams, I think, where it's like we've seen this Rams perform at the best offense in the NFL. It would not be surprising for them to kind of continue at that rate, in which case there's probably value at the Rams at 48. I mean, I have it at earlier prices, which is why they're not my kind of style. Or the Texans also, like with a quarterback like CJ Stroud, if everything goes right, which is what you need in order to kind of hit a long shot or a future. Like, there is a path for them to get to the Super Bowl or win a Super Bowl. I don't think that's necessarily true of kind of the bottom teams. And the reason I don't love it is because I think you can kind of make a case for most of the teams, and there's kind of a lot of muddiness and cloudiness that is kind of built into this pricing. But that's the mindset I think you have to have of, if everything goes right, what's the best case scenario here?
Okay, yeah. One of those teams that Judah mentioned, Sam, are the Rams. And you think if you were to force to have a bet, or a little fun one to cheer on for the next few weeks, you do think the Rams are a tad overpriced at 48.0 currently?
Yeah, for me, definitely. I'm not interested in taking anybody in single digits. The 49ers are the team that I think will win, but I think 3.4, isn't it? I just can't bet on that. I think that's an absolutely crazy thing to be betting on. But the Rams, I'm also, I know the Chiefs are slightly outside the single digit range. I'd say Chiefs and above are the teams that I think kind of have a reasonable chance. Maybe not the Bills, but I look at that. Anyone below that, I'm kind of interested in sort of investigating. Would I put my money on it? Do I think there's a chance? And kind of much like Judah said, I think obviously everything needs to go right for these teams, but the Rams are the team that at 48, I think things could go right for them, and they're one of the few teams there that I could see winning, not just this week, but also next week and after that. I could see them, a path for them. So at 48, I think that's where the value is. That doesn't necessarily mean I think they're going to win the Super Bowl, or I think they're likely to win the Super Bowl, but I think that is where the value is on this one.
Okay, and back to lay options on the match with betting exchange, just to apply that further. If you back the Rams next week and they win next week, there'll be a shorter price. You can get out, lay off some of your stake, and keep that going another week and lay off even further more of your stake, waging guaranteed profit or lock in profit while also cheering on the Rams as well. So plenty you can do on the match with betting exchange, and do check out our NFL markets, not just the outrights, but the 6 games that we're going to cover now. And those 6 games are Browns at Texans. We've got the Dolphins at Chiefs, Saturday Night Football, I guess, Steelers at Bills, Packers at Cowboys, Rams at Lions, Eagles at the Bucs, best long shots, and then best bets from the guys we were already talking off here. Those of us in the UK and Ireland, there may have to be a couple of late nights if you want to get the best matches in. But look, it's built for that US TV audience, unfortunately for us, but we do obviously respect that for you guys. We'll get straight into it. Start with the Browns at the Texans. This is Saturday, 9:30 p.m. UK and Ireland time, and we'll take a look at the betting that we currently have on the match with betting exchange. Browns are favorites here, 178. The Texans, 2.22 dogs. The handicap sees the Texans get a 2.5 head start, 195 currently at the time of recording, and the total here is 44.5. Judah, kick it off. I think if Sam gets Jordan Love this year, I think you're the CJ Stroud man. I think you were on him very early, and I think you should revel in that and make the case why he can get this Texans team even further into the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of part of the handicap for sure. I think it's important to start with actually where the prices were week 16, which was not long ago. And this is kind of when we thought CJ Stroud was coming back from the concussion. This is a Texans team that was favored by 2.5 at home. And now, of course, are underdogs by that same margin, also at home. That's a pretty big swing. Yes, the points are between 3, but in terms of win probability, that's a 15% swing, I believe, which I think kind of sets the tone for understanding this handicap, which is that I think that number one, the Texans are probably underrated relative to market for kind of a lot of the reasons you're mentioning with CJ Stroud. Something we talked about last week, which is when we're talking about like Noah Brown missing a game, I think that says more about CJ Stroud than it does Noah Brown. And like, yes, the Texans are dealing with a bunch of wide receiver injuries, but obviously we saw what Nico Collins is capable of doing as a wide receiver 1. And I think CJ Stroud can kind of elevate the rest of the attack. I think that's part of the reason why the price is closer to the Browns. But I would also say that there's a lot of kind of, Joe Flacco has played really great. And even if you look at the like passing props as kind of an indicator of that, like he's prop right now is sitting at 275, which is, obviously there's some stuff about duration and how often teams are going to pass, but that is among the higher passing props available on the board, which I think kind of speaks to how the market thinks the Browns are going to move the ball on offense. And something I'd want to sell, which is that Joe Flacco has played 2 terrific games, but it's also, we have to recognize, an extremely volatile style of play, of just kind of launching it deep. Sure, there are going to be a bunch of picks and also a bunch of long plays, but it's not necessarily a sustainable method of attack. If you kind of look at, I have this metric called earned drive points, which is effectively looking at how sustainable play is, kind of down weighting explosive plays, especially for teams like the Browns and not Dolphins or whomever that might be, kind of suiting it to their style of play. This is a team that is certainly overachieving in terms of their results relative to the fundamental play. And I think that's kind of at the core of this handicap, which is that this is a Browns team that, yes, has been great over the last 2 weeks, but I think the pricing looks very different if we flip the week 16 and 17 games with the week 13 and 14 games. And I think nothing has fundamentally changed about the team. This isn't like we're not going to learn something breaking about Joe Flacco. I think the pricing was probably better in week 16 than it is now. And if anything, we've seen CJ Stroud kind of perform in, yes, he had the terrible game against the Jets in bad weather. We've seen him perform in some spots against good defenses that I'm not particularly worried about the Browns. I think Stroud's underrated relative to market. I think the market has adjusted too much to the Browns' recent success. It's still a very volatile style of play, and I'm happy to back the Texans here.
Okay, spoiler alert, Sam. We're all ultimately in an agreement on the side here with the Texans. Watching that game last week, CJ Stroud throws that incredible. It was a 75-yard play. You think they're really going to arrive here, and then they sort of went into their shell, started running the ball a lot, and took the ball out of CJ Stroud's hand. Are they going to put it back in his hand when it really matters in this game to justify perhaps backing the Texans here?
I think they will, and I totally agree with everything Judah said there. First and foremost, are we really putting that much stock into Joe Flacco in what is now 2024? It's crazy to me. We've only seen 5 games from him, and although he was, I'd say, really good in 1, good in 2, this is a guy who's still been picked 8 times in 5 games and thrown just 13 touchdown passes. He isn't, the second coming or something. It's crazy. And as good as the defense is, they are very, very good. They still have allowed more points per game than the Texans. And I know there's obviously the offense is the reason behind that. But I don't think they're going to be able to move the ball on the Texans quite as easily as maybe it's projected with the bookies. And my main kind of reason here is just CJ Stroud. And I think we talked about this last week, but I think when you consider his mentality, he's led the team from come from behind wins. He's been injured. He's battled through that. He's had missing players. He's battled through that. This is a guy that he doesn't seem to get phased. And I don't care that he's a rookie going into the playoffs. I don't think he plays like a rookie. I don't think he has the mentality of a rookie. I think this is a guy who kind of really can elevate those players around him. And I think we're going to see the Texans win. I've only gone for money line. I haven't been quite as brave as Judah in the points as well. But yeah, for me, I think the Texans win this, and I think they're going to do it in style as well.
Okay, yeah, Drew, over to you. And last week, both Judah and Sam went for the Texans. You were a bit more cautious with the under. Now you've combined the two this week. Would you be worried in those concerns when we see a couple of comments on the Texans running game and are maybe over-reliant instead of perhaps just giving the ball to Stroud and trusting their quarterback?
Well, I definitely concerned about that. To a degree, the Texans' offensive sequencing was their own worst enemy in that Colts game. If they were a little more aggressive in the first half, that could have been like 28 points and game's over. Instead, they had to sweat out a 4th down conversion that was a very high likelihood conversion that Gardner Minshew just completely botched. So, they were pretty close to being eliminated. And, the major takeaways were, you had a young coaching staff that kind of choked in the playoff setting, but you had a young quarterback who was unbelievably cool. And, there's a couple of things I think that are built into this price. One is the Browns didn't take week 18 very seriously. So they effectively treated it as a bye for some of their key players. So there should be a little bit of a rest bump. And the other thing that I think is likely built into this price is people fading the playoff debutant in CJ Stroud against the more experienced Joe Flacco, when in reality, I would expect that CJ Stroud has a better performance on Saturday, even up against the tougher defense. The Browns defense is a little bit of a mystery to me. And you're going to get this sense from everything we talk about today. I kind of sprayed the board this week, but everything is a relatively low conviction. I don't think there's like huge, awesome, amazing edges to be had in these wild card rounds. I just think in general, things are a little bit mispriced in terms of, little too much confidence in some of these favorites, a little bit too many points for some of these, what are playoff setting games. And I think this is kind of, both of them combined for this one. I think under is a fair play. I think Texans is a fair play at price. And it comes down to just having the better quarterback and expecting a little bit of a tighter game. Browns, when they played the Texans the first time, you saw Joe Flacco and Amari Cooper connect for what was one of the most impressive single game performances from any receiver all season. Maybe the most impressive for the last couple of years, honestly. And I think at the time it caught the Texans a little by surprise in terms of how the Browns were running their offense. It wasn't the kind of normal run-focused Browns offense that a lot of their tape was suggesting throughout the season. It was a little bit more of a, we actually have a guy with a live arm in Flacco. We're just going to uncork it. And I think it caught the Texans, a little bit flat-footed. And now that they've seen that, I would expect a better game plan here from DeMeco Ryans in the defense in terms of how to stop it. And in general, the Texans pass rush, I'm very, very hopeful that they're healthier than they were last week. That group was limping into the close. And now with the week, of rest, I'm fingers crossed that D-line is a little bit more full strength. Similarly, fingers crossed that the Texans skill position group is a little bit more full strength. Nico Collins got a little banged up in that game. And, it's been a little bit tough to see CJ Stroud find a ton of, kind of chemistry with Dalton Schultz for whatever reason. And the running game for the Texans is a joke. It's not ever going to work. I don't know why they continue to lean into it, but you can count on at least 25 plays apparently. So, I think that kind of leans me in the direction of the under here. And I think ultimately this is going to be a game decided by field goals and field position. And so, Browns defense is a little bit overrated, I think, just because most of their pretty impressive performances came at the earlier portion of the season. And, for whatever reason, just the attrition of playing that hard and, relying so heavily on your defensive line and those guys taking a little bit of damage over the balance of the season has kind of brought them back to earth a hair. I think this is going to be a game that's decided by 3 points either way. My fair total here is 43. I think this is going to be like 23-20 Texans, and I played both Texans money line and some under.
Okay, money line 2.22. The under currently 196 on the matchup betting exchange and Judah. Alternative handicaps, as always, Texans -2.5, eking out that value when they win by 3, 23-20. We've called it here already. Just 5 more games to cover. Dolphins at the Chiefs is Saturday night football, I guess, best way of describing it. It's 1:15 a.m. on Sunday for those looking to stay up in the UK and Ireland. Dolphins 2.9 underdogs to the Chiefs, who are 1.5. The Dolphins are getting a 4-point head start at even money. The total here is 44.5. Not as many plays on this game here amongst the guys. Sam, you are playing the Chiefs, so sort of made the case for why ultimately you think they're good enough to lay 4 points here.
So I was a little undecided. Part of me wants to back the Dolphins, but this is purely has to be on the weather. And I know this has been a kind of an interesting topic across social media and with the players as well. We've had Dolphins players come out and say that they're not bothered about the weather. It doesn't affect people as much as sort of the general public think. And I imagine there probably is a grain of truth to that. But at the same time, this isn't just cold weather. This is extreme cold. It's forecast to be 15 degrees Fahrenheit, which is for us in the UK and Ireland -9, which is absolutely bonkers. And I saw some stats from John Ewing on Twitter that the Dolphins are 0-9 in weather under 40 degrees since 2017. And obviously there's not necessarily the same playing staff and all those things to kind of play into account here. But ultimately, this is Tua, who we know he's not totally 100%. He's obviously from Hawaii. I do really worry that this is going to be an issue. The Chiefs did a pretty good job of shutting down Tua in Germany, which was obviously their, I guess, designated home game. And I think they're going to be able to do that again here when it's just not going to be favorable conditions at all. And yeah, so I think the other thing that kind of really leans towards the Chiefs here is kind of having that sort of self-imposed bye week in week 18. We didn't see all of the main players there, which I think is probably going to do them a lot of good, a lot of chance to heal up, hopefully kind of spend some time cooking up some interesting things in the playbook and to see what we can kind of come up with. And yeah, I think it's just going to be really interesting. The Tyreek obviously looks a bit banged up, and if there's anybody that knows how to deal with him, it should be the Chiefs. So yeah, and then obviously the injuries for the Dolphins as well with Xavier Howard, I think it's going to be a real big one. I just think all in all, I don't really want to pick the Chiefs, but everything I'm seeing is telling me that's the way to go. So Chiefs -4, and then I think they'll be eliminated next round.
Okay, 194 Chiefs -4. Drew, you're ultimately a pass here. Is there more questions than answers about these two teams? What was the shutter process here?
No, I passed mostly because I bet the Chiefs to win the AFC, so I kind of already have some stake
To double down.
in them. Kind of getting past this hurdle. I also have Chiefs money line in a couple of round robin exotics, but my fare is actually closer to Chiefs -7. Once we get some injury reports from the Dolphins, I'll probably consider laying the points with the Chiefs. If this were a completely neutral game, and there was no weather, there was no rest advantage, and there were no injuries, I would say this should be about a pick 'em. But once you account for all that, I think the Chiefs should be pretty heavily favored here. The Dolphins' injury status is pretty unbelievable. I don't recall a team kind of limping into the close as aggressively as this group has, considering that kind of all of the key pieces that made them their best when they were playing well, really kind of either not 100% or just not available at all. Defenses in particular, like I rate the Dolphins defense pretty close to the Eagles as the worst in the playoff group, as currently constituted, with the absence of Xavier Howard. No pass rush with no Van Ginkel, no Chubb, no Jalen Phillips. Jerome Baker was grading well for me, and he's out now as well. So it's really kind of a true second unit defense against the Chiefs offense that I think has definitely some bright spots, and at least is balanced, and at least has Pat Mahomes, who's probably more willing to scramble now that it's playoff time. So I think there's definitely scope for the Chiefs offense to be upgraded as people kind of see what form they're going to take in the playoffs. And I think the Chiefs defense is a little bit underrated right now. Like over the last half of the season, people kind of look at EPA per play and they're like, man, these guys really fell off. I thought they were good. But it's really just they haven't been forcing turnovers. If you remove turnovers from everybody over the last half of the season, it's still a top 5 defense in terms of EPA per play allowed. So I'm not really worried about the Chiefs defense, finding a gear here to stop the Dolphins. Particularly Chris Jones getting some quick pressures on the interior and disrupting Tua seems likely. And just in general, the opportunity of going against a team that wears teal into a 0-degree environment is appealing to me.
Okay, yeah. And Judah, you're the same. You're ultimately a pass here. Any quick line or two on these teams, or what was your initial thinking before ultimately deciding to pass?
Yeah, I think it was just too many questions. I think what everyone said is true, but at the end of the day, I think the Dolphins still have the better offense, which kind of cancels out a lot of the injuries and weather and all this stuff, which I think is properly baked in. And I do think that a lot of this price has to do with kind of projecting a Chiefs defense that is far better than the Dolphins. And I do think that the Dolphins can kind of mitigate a lot of the areas where the Chiefs are best. But at the end of the day, this is still a Dolphins team that, as Drew said, is really limping into the playoffs. I would have loved the under before the weather. And I do think the Dolphins actually have the biggest matchup advantage in this game, which is their rushing attack against the Chiefs. And if they kind of slow the game down and jump out to a lead and can lean on that rushing attack, I can very much see them winning this game. But ultimately, this is a pass. Too many unknowns for me. But definitely a game I'll be fascinated to watch.
Yeah, more questions than answered, but hopefully they do get answered in the Sunday 1:15 slot. We'll move to Sunday 6 p.m. in the UK and Ireland for Steelers at the Bills, and take a look at the betting that we have on the Matchup Betting Exchange. You can see high liquid markets already on the money line. Steelers currently 5.1, and you can get 1,600 quid on that if you want. The Bills are 1.21 favorites. The handicap sees the Steelers get a 10-point head start at 192. And the total for this game, wait for it, 36.5. Creeping up, it was 36 earlier, 188 the under. So, Drew, I was going to say you're Steelers, but you're getting on the Steelers train. So we've gone from you're taking the mid-season was, they get as much away from the Steelers as possible. But are they winning you over the last few weeks, or is this just a really good spot?
It's just a really big number.
That's true. Playoffs.
I will say that I honestly don't know what to do with Mason Rudolph and how to grade him, how to rate him. There's a lot of data throughout his career that tells you he's no good, but he's playing well. And to the degree that the Steelers had an offensive coordinator that didn't necessarily know who their best weapons were, how to use them for a lot of the season, like, was Mason Rudolph the best answer for them at the quarterback position all season? Maybe. But whatever the case is, he does kind of definitely operate the offense within the parameters that can find success. Their rushing attack for the Steelers is notably solid. Like, they're just flat out good. A lot of their rushing attack succeeds off tackle. That, for whatever it's worth, is where the Bills still have some softness on defense. The Bills defense kind of bottomed out middle of the season, a couple of games after losing Matt Milano in London. And since then, the replacement level players have all improved performance significantly. Some of the kind of key secondary players have gotten healthier. But there is now, again, a second wave here of injuries, particularly in the secondary that I'm watching. Teron Johnson and Rasul Douglas, like, these guys going out, definitely is worth keeping an eye on. And I think ultimately the Steelers could be able to, at least kind of continue some of the success we've seen from them since Mason Rudolph took over. He had 2 games in a row where he graded well. His total EPA generated was significantly positive. Some of the best Steelers, quarterback performances of the season were those 2 games in week 16 and 17 by Mason Rudolph. And you can, absolutely discount that if you want by saying it was the Bengals and the Seahawks, 2 of the worst defenses in the NFL. But I do think there is potential for enough confidence and enough competence here on behalf of Mason Rudolph to make this a competitive game. The weather and the conditions bringing this total down makes 10 points that much more valuable. And I think you would have had to put this at about 8 to 7.5 for me to be like, this is a complete pass. And ultimately that might not be enough of an edge for a lot of people to get involved anyway. But I do think the Bills offense is still pretty fraudulent, pretty overrated by market. And the Steelers defense, even in the absence of TJ Watt, still has a lot of good players and can scheme pretty well. And you're getting solid coverage out of Joey Porter Jr. You're getting solid linebacker play from some of these kind of lesser known names. And I think ultimately the Steelers defense will be able to hold up against the Bills offense that is overrated. And for all these reasons, I think this is going to be a competitive game. I took a swing on some Steelers money line and some kind of exotic parlays as well, just because who the heck knows? It's the playoffs and the Bills can't be trusted. Bills almost lost to Skylar Thompson last year in this spot. So I wouldn't put anything past them in terms of letdown, underwhelming performances at this point. So very, very low conviction take for me that the Steelers are the right side.
Okay, Judah. Yeah, it's hard to argue with Drew on the Bills being overrated by market, perhaps. What is the argument to perhaps consider laying that 9.5, 10 points with them here if you were to have a bet?
Yeah, I mean, even if there is bad weather, if they decide they want to throw the ball again like they did last week and have their quarterback basically account for 400 yards of offense on his own, then the Bills are, I think, mispriced at 10. And would absolutely stomp the Steelers. But I don't think that's how they're going to attack, because that's not how they've attacked the last 7 weeks since Joe Brady's taken over. And that's a team that wants to primarily run the ball first. And I don't think that's a recipe for success against the Steelers defense that basically when Cam Hayward is playing, this is a team that has been dominant against the run. You're just going to be wasting a bunch of carries. You're going to be taking the ball out of your best player's hands. And I think that's not a recipe for sustained success. I do lean the Bills still because I kind of see this as a spot. Like, there's a non-zero chance the Steelers team gets shut out. The Bills defense has been awesome. I don't really know. I actually want to monitor the Rasul Douglas injury. I haven't seen much there. I think that really matters. He's grading out absolutely terrifically for the Bills. And it would not shock me to kind of see like the Mason Rudolph of the past 3 years. I kind of trust that sample a lot more than I do the past bunch of weeks, a lot of which is relied upon some, massive explosive plays from George Pickens. But ultimately it is going to be, I lean the Bills just because I do think the kind of base rates of success are so much higher. Even when the Bills want to sabotage themselves, they still do have Josh Allen to bail them out. They're still a far better defense than the Steelers. TJ Watt injury matters a ton. I think that his sustained success on the defensive line is one thing, but I think he, of all people, forces more turnovers, and I don't think that's particularly fluky. I think that's the style of his rush. Maybe some interesting research for later. But it's a pass for me. I would lean the Bills. Quite an interesting game with such a low total. We'll be fascinated to see how it plays out.
Yeah, Sam, it's similar with the Texans and CJ Stroud. Will the ball be in Josh Allen's hand enough for them to justify covering that 9.5, 10 point spread?
I think it will be. And I think here I think 10 is absolutely bang on the money, if I'm honest. So I've kind of gone for the slight alternative line of 9.5, Bills minus 9.5. I was really close to being a no bet here because I don't ultimately have a huge amount of faith in the Bills. But one thing I do have a lot of faith in is the Steelers not being able to put up many points. So I don't think they're going to get double-digit points. Maybe just, maybe 10 points, something like that. So this is kind of basically based around that kind of theory. And I do think we will see the Bills score, even if it's not going to be a huge total for them. I'm still really worried about the Bills. Even we saw Josh Allen pass a lot more last week, but even 2 passing touchdowns, he still gets picked off twice, and he is what he is right now, and that's somebody that you can't really trust in terms of putting your hard-earned money that you've worked hard on for him. So yeah, I think TJ Watt is a massive one, but I just can't bring myself to back Mason Rudolph. So for me, I'm expecting this to be an absolute horror show of a game, and maybe Bills low 20s, Steelers probably around 10, something like that. So I'm taking Bills minus 9.5. I'm not happy about it, to be honest with you guys, but it's the playoffs. I've got to do it.
It's okay, Sam. Nobody believes in us.
That's the thing. As soon as I'm taking a big price favorite and I see that you're on the money line, we may as well just let Mike Tomlin just have a bye. Don't worry about it.
Do his thing.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Tomlin, he's definitely not a guy that can't get his troops riled up, ready to go fight hard. And this is Bills weather, but it's maybe it's Steelers weather. So yeah, I honestly, this is going to be a weird one. And just because the weather is so extreme and the wind is so extreme, I kind of want the high variance price point on this one.
I do think if you take that 5.1 money line, there'll be a moment in the game. You may be early on, maybe late on when you go, this could be on. So perhaps a fun one and staying out. But ultimately, Drew is plus 10.0, 193, and the minus 9.5 on the Bills, incidentally, currently priced at 191 on the matchup betting exchange. And Judah's leading Buffalo, but ultimately a pass. We'll move to Packers at Cowboys now. I'm really looking forward to this one, to be fair. We've got the money line on the matchup betting exchange, having the Packers underdogs at 4.3, the Cowboys 129. Point spread sees Packers get over a touchdown, 7.5 currently at 193, and the highest total along with the Rams and the Lions at 51.5 this weekend. The over is 2.0. So Judah, take it away. You're ultimately a no bet here. Again, talk us a little bit about your thought process, and then we'll bring the guys in and have selections each.
I'm ultimately a no bet here because by any indicator of what I've done, I'm scripting the market, my prices, everything lands on exactly this price, and would have done so for the past couple of weeks also, which I think is kind of fascinating. But the reason one of the reasons I'm not betting this is point spreads do exist kind of in 2 spheres. One, it's like a kind of reflection of the fundamental value of a team, but they are also real points in a real game. And we've seen the Cowboys front run like no other team, such that I don't think 7.5 to the Cowboys matters the same as 7.5 to insert some random team. I don't know, the Browns. And that's what's kind of ultimately laying off, though I kind of lean the Packers, because if this game turns into just a complete shootout where the defenses don't really matter and it's just best offense, I think the Cowboys defense is very overrated, especially once you get past this pass rush and the Packers offensive line and their pass protection. I know Drew's going to mention this. This pass protection has been terrific, and that can kind of mitigate the effects of a Cowboys pass rush, which has been terrific. And once you kind of get past that secondary where the Packers have a huge matchup advantage by virtue of any of their wide receivers, can kind of beat any of the Dallas cornerbacks. They should have guys open all the time. And if this pass protection unit kind of holds up, this is a Packers team that I think can go toe-to-toe with the Cowboys. That being said, if the Cowboys jump out to a 10-0 lead early on by some variance, and all of a sudden the Dallas pass rush can kind of just, go full steam ahead, because they know the Packers are passing, and then the Dallas pass rush is influencing this Packers offensive line, that matchup kind of goes out the door, and I just can see the Cowboys absolutely stomping them. All of which is to say, it's a lot of kind of fascinating ways this game can play out. Maybe that's an argument to play kind of those tails. But ultimately, if we're looking at kind of a median projection, I think it is spot on. And there are so many ways for this game to play out that I'm not confident in one way or another that it's willing to kind of trigger a bet here.
Okay, yeah, and then we've got Sam and Drew on opposite ends again. I'll let you go first this time, Sam, on why the Cowboys perhaps -7.5 or bringing it down alternatively into maybe -6.5 to be safe is the right side this weekend.
Yeah, so I've brought it down slightly to -6.5. I think kind of 7 points is where I was projecting it when I looked into this, and this is a really tough one because I see Judah's points here, and I can kind of see where Drew is going to go with this. And I definitely think there's kind of cause for concern for Dallas, but as good as Love has been, and he has been exceptional this last few weeks, last 8 weeks, 18 touchdowns, 1 interception it's incredible. The thing that really concerns me for the Packers is they're stepping into Jerry world, and that only ends one way right now, and that is in a Dallas Cowboys win. And it's as simple as that, really, because I think this team just on home field seem to just become a different beast. The defense looks better. The offense just looks so explosive. It puts up just crazy numbers points wise. The average they've been beating people on their home field is insanely high, which we'll touch upon a bit later. But yeah, for me, it's purely just I think I know what the Cowboys are now, and I still, even after 18 weeks of a regular season, I'm not 100% sure what the Packers truly are. And I spoke earlier saying I think CJ Stroud is a guy that I don't think the playoffs are going to phase him from a sort of mentality perspective. I don't 100% know if I would say that about Jordan Love. I feel like he potentially is maybe more susceptible to kind of the occasion. So yeah, I'm taking Cowboys -6.5. I think 7 is probably about right for this one. And yeah, that's it.
I can't believe you're deserting Jordan Love, Sam. Playoff
I've been
time
trying
when
to
it
desert
really
him for
matters.
weeks.
You have to be fair, and this is no better place to do it. Drew, make the case. Look, it's going to be a raucous atmosphere in the AT&T. The expectant Dallas Cowboy fans, is this their year to finally win the Super Bowl after so long? So why do you think the Packers are a bit of smidgen of values at +7.5?
Yeah, we've definitely never seen the Cowboys play tight at home in the playoffs ever, ever in our lives. We definitely never seen Mike McCarthy make some end of game decisions that are just inexcusable in the playoffs. Never seen it. The real kind of thought I have about this game and these two teams is this feels like Spider-Man meme to me, where these two teams are basically the same. Like, I don't see a huge margin of difference between them, and the way that they want to attack, the way that the efficiency in the passing game for these two teams it's very, very similar. The margin of difference between Dak Prescott and Jordan Love over the balance of the season was not especially high. And I think the Packers are coming into this contest with a very live offense, excellent pass protection, as Jude already mentioned, and that gives them an opportunity to go score for score with the Cowboys. The Cowboys offense will score in this game. I don't think there's really anything kind of I don't think there's a case to be made if the Green Bay Packers defense is going to do anything. Both defenses, I think, are pretty suspect. Both defenses can give up explosive plays. But that said, if I was going to come up with like kind of the optimal offense to make the Packers defense look miserable, it would have a lot more, kind of push them off the line of scrimmage and get your running game going. And if the Packers can play it at any point in this game with a positive game state, their pass rush is effective enough to make the Cowboys sweat a little bit here. So Cowboys offensive line injuries, I think, are being a little bit undercovered. Cowboys just in general are the less healthy team between these two. I think the fact that Aaron Jones had as much pop as he had last week for the Packers is worth kind of paying attention to, because they were up against a very, very good run defense, and Aaron Jones was very, very live. So I think you can have a pretty balanced attack here for the Packers to go score for score with a good Cowboys offense. And I think ultimately, if this comes down to end of game decision making, give me Matt LaFleur over Mike McCarthy every day of the week. I don't think this is necessarily like denigrating the Cowboys. Like, I think the Cowboys are an incredible team. I think they're still very live to win the NFC. I just think the Packers are better than people realize, largely because their offense is capable of putting up 30 points if they have to. So, This should be a really fun game, and I think kind of in the world where the Packers play with the positive game state, they can win outright. So give me the 7.5 points, give me some Packers money line here, and I think this is going to be a really fun contest.
Okay, we'll get to long shots later on. Packers plus 7.5, 193. Cowboys minus 6.5. It's currently priced at 171 on Matchbook, but waiting for that market to fill out a little bit. So be in and around 174, 175 if you want to play it a little bit safe, but also have the Cowboys on side. We'll go to Sunday Night Football. Rams at Lions, another game where a lot of people in the UK and Ireland will have to debate whether to stay up for or not. The Rams are 246 underdogs, Lions 164 favorites. The Rams are getting a 3-point head start at 199, and the total is 51.5. Drew, I want to go straight back to you because these are your Rams that you put up for the NFC a lot of time ago. Is that why you're staying away from the Rams here, or sidewise, would you go for the Rams, or do you just prefer this underlook here?
Yeah, a bit. I mean, I have if the Rams succeed in the NFC, that'll be the best outcome for me of anything in the playoffs. So I'm cheering for the Rams. I think the Rams are good. I think their ceiling is high. Both Sam and Judah, I think, kind of alluded to that off the top. If Stafford is playing clean football, then the Rams are going to be very tough to beat. This is a really just a cool, fun matchup, obviously, for all of the off the field stuff. McVay trading Goff to the Lions, now getting to go play at the Lions and Goff is fun. Stafford returning to Detroit is fun. But from like how these teams match up with each other, I do think that both defenses are coming in a little bit underrated right now. I don't really know how the Lions defense kind of rescued their season when halfway through the year I was ready to absolutely throw them on the trash pile as like bottom 5. I don't see it. I don't see there being any room for scope for improvement here. This is just a lost year. But by the end of the season, they were definitely playing quite a lot better than I had kind of rationalized or really wrapped my head around. And I would say the same for the Rams. I think there's an opportunity here for either of these teams, if they generate a lead, to really be able to put together some long drives on the ground. Rushing success for both the Lions and the Rams would spell a shorter game potentially, and just in general. I think the both teams, Lions have had one of the most just impossibly good red zone offenses all season, but that was born largely out of having Sam Laporta out there, and he's not going to be out there now. So I'm kind of curious to see exactly what the Lions do to kind of recapture that unbelievable red zone efficiency. The Rams are not a good red zone team in general. And so I think this is a game that ultimately you could see each team put up 400 yards of offense, but still only get 24 points. So my fair total would be on the low side of 50 here. So the fact that we're getting 51.5, I think, is a fair play to the under. Just again, in general, like either of these teams, both of these teams this is a playoff setting. This is not style points. This is not, put your, foot on the other team's throat and bury them here. If either of these teams has a lead with 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, would I be surprised to see them put together a 6-minute drive and just wipe out the game? No. I think the Rams rushing offense is good enough to do that. The Lions rushing offense is good enough to do that. I hope the Rams find a way to win, but I'm not expecting a shootout here.
Okay, under 51.5, a really good case for the under. We'll go to you, Judah, on this with the Rams. You're ultimately siding with them here, so make the case of why you think they're the right side.
Yeah, I like Drew. Certainly the best outcome would be the Rams winning the NFC. That's my biggest future, but I still kind of don't understand this price at all, enough that it's going to trigger a bet. I think I was frankly shocked this game opened up on the other side of 3. Just even tracking the kind of market's pricing of that seems to be upgrading the Lions quite a bit from previous weeks. And I think I kind of stated at the outset why I'm so high on the Rams. This is an offense that when everyone's healthy has performed at basically the best offense in the NFL. And I don't think that's kind of noisy in any such way. They have serious talent. Obviously, Sean McVay, he kind of gets because of Kyle Shanahan's placement in the division, is not a guy I think that's talked about as this great offensive mind, but he obviously is. One interesting, kind of note here is if you look at the rolling average of how a defense has performed, and then when they play the Rams, how the Rams offense has performed, they've basically outperformed their matchup in every single week but one, with that 1 week being the game where Brett Rippon started. The Rams have essentially outperformed the average of a defense every single game. They're remarkably consistent. I think they're the better offense. They have a better defense than the Lions. They are also playing kind of off a bye because they didn't play most of their starters last week. Sure, the Lions are good. They're very aggressive, which kind of leads to a high variance. And Drew, I would really love the total, except for I think that kind of element of just like projecting fewer punts and a lot of kind of this randomness. But ultimately, I think the Rams are better in basically every facet of this game. And I think the kind of home field advantage is mitigated a bit by the rest advantage that the Rams have. I think this price should be something like Lions -1.5, maybe Lions, maybe 2. I could make an argument for a pick 'em too. I think this game is grossly mispriced, and I'm going to back the Rams here.
Okay, and Sam, you agree? Money line price currently 246.
Yeah, I can't wait for this one. It's obviously the late one on Sunday night, and I already know I'm going to be sort of crying into my coffee come Monday morning, but this game is must watch. I totally agree with Judah. I think, well, I don't know if they're the best offense in the NFL. I think they're certainly up there, and these are two of my favorite teams to watch on offense for sure. And not only that, you've just got narrative after narrative with this one. Matt Stafford finally having a playoff game in Detroit. You've got Goff against his old head coach. It's just so good. And I totally agree with what you said about McVay potentially not getting the kind of praise that I think he deserves. And he's just an incredible football mind. I love watching his team. But anyway, enough about that. Let's talk about the game itself. I frankly just don't trust the Lions defense. I think we've seen all year they are pretty shoddy. Giving up 247.4 scrimmage yards per game, the 6th highest in the NFL. And they're coming against one of the best offenses in the NFL. And I think we've not seen this offense almost at their peak, particularly this season. Obviously, we had Cooper Kupp started the season injured. And if we're honest, it's taken him a long time to kind of get back near his best. And I still don't think he's there yet. Kyron Williams missed a stretch in the middle of the season. Puka Nacua has kind of missed some time as well. Or at least been struggling in terms of maybe not 100% when he has been on the field at times. I think the Rams coming into this really good hot streak. I think 4 wins in a row, which is the 2nd highest in the league. Defense is far better than that of the Lions. And I think we are kind of underrating this Rams offense in terms of how good they are against the competition. And for me, this is the one that I just can't wait for. I think the Rams will win. It's just going to be a really good, exciting game, I think. And I do actually agree with Drew in that I think the total is incredibly high. And I think we could see this being a fair bit lower than potentially it's kind of priced up to be. And I kind of really do question Dan Campbell playing his starters last week and almost putting them at a disadvantage against the Rams, who didn't do that. I don't really get that decision. It seems like, I mean, it's totally on brand for Dan Campbell, but it was strange to me. And I'm glad they kind of didn't have anything horrific happen that would have kind of really made him look stupid for doing it. But at the same time, I think it's a wild decision. I think the Rams come into this well rested and hungry. And I think Matt Stafford, this is a guy who he knows how to win in these situations. We saw that on the last Super Bowl run for the Rams. And I just really think he's going to go into Detroit and he's going to be able to deal with the emotions a lot better than Jared Goff will.
Okay, we've got Drew under 51.5, 198. Rams money line for Sam 246, and alternative handicap on the matchup betting exchange for Judah. Rams -2.5, eking out a bit more of a price there. Finally, Monday Night Football, final game of wildcard weekend, super wildcard weekend. Eagles at the Bucs. Eagles 166 favorites. What's happened to them the last few weeks? The Bucs 242. The point spread sees Eagles laying 3 points, and the total here is 43.5. Sam, I might go back to you on this one, just on the Eagles. And like, I live with an Eagles fan. He doesn't know the answer. What's gone on with them in the last few weeks? Almost since that victory mid-season against Chiefs and a lot of celebrating, they haven't seemed to be able to put any sort of good football together.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things we spoke about for quite a while now, certainly at the start of the season, I was quite adamant that they weren't as good as the record. And I think they managed to eke out some wins that potentially they didn't deserve. Whether that was through, we talked about it, the tush push, or just the sheer kind of mental strength that we've seen from Jalen Hurts in almost willing them to victory at times. And I think we've maybe seen a slight regression the other way now. But I think ultimately coming into this, they are just a far better team, in my view. And even though they are self-destructing at the moment, I think that they have a higher kind of threshold in terms of being able to put up points. I know Hurts is banged up and has been playing banged up for a while. AJ Brown, don't really know whether he's going to be kind of good to go. And if he is good to go, then what sort of condition he's going to be in. And I think ultimately, do I trust Jalen Hurts more or Baker Mayfield? And there's only one answer to that. The Bucs are simply not that good a team. A record marginally over 500 in an absolutely appalling division that has one okay team, one bad team, and one horrific team. And even then, they beat the okay. Sorry, they scored 13 points in a defeat to the okay team 2 weeks ago, and they managed to score 9 points against a terrible Panthers team last week. So for me, I don't see this. As much as I don't think the Eagles are particularly great, I think they're going to win this by more than a touchdown. Just because of the ability they have on offense when they're firing. And I think we've seen before. I would argue kind of mentality is one of the strengths of this team. And I think coming into what's an important game, I think we're going to see them at their best.
Okay, plus money price for Sam Lane, Eagles 6.5 points. We will go to you, Drew, on this one. So it's ultimately a pass aside, but so take it away on your thoughts in this game and where you were sort of looking for a bet.
Yeah, I was looking for Bucs. I was looking for under. Actually, I played the under on the open at 44.5. I bought out at 43.5 to the over. So I'd love to land 44. Too many questions right now with injuries and very, very little information. Just a sidebar. Like, I'm very annoyed with the amount of air being sucked out of the room with coaching firings and coaching interviews instead of just telling us who's going to be freaking available this week. Like, the information people, like, do your job, like, tell us who's playing. No, ultimately I think the Eagles are in a worse state in terms of injuries. That we started the season, I thought maybe this was like an 18th ranked defense, and they overperformed a little bit at the beginning. Then they performed about expected in the middle, and now they've been actually more like the 28th ranked defense now that we see the dust settle. I think Nick Sirianni made probably the worst coaching decision of the year, bringing in Matt Patricia and then giving him the keys to the defense. They've been very predictable and very beatable in every single matchup we've seen since he's been in charge. I don't understand why they haven't made another adjustment away from him, but apparently they have some sort of faith that he's going to have the answers to stop Baker Mayfield and the Bucs. Baker Mayfield looked physically broken in the game against the Carolina Panthers, where they only scored 9 points. Although I will say that there was a key drop by Mike Evans in that one that could have just made that game, kind of put it out of reach in the middle of the game. Ultimately, the fact that you have Godwin and Evans is a nice matchup against the Eagles secondary that should get back Slay, but still is pretty below average. So I think the Bucs probably win this game. I sprinkled money line with some exotics plays, but I really, really would like to see some film of Baker Mayfield at practice, see that he's recovering a bit from the rib and ankle injury that he suffered from. I would also like to know who of the Eagles offense is going to play here. The fact that Hurts broke his finger or dislocated his finger or whatever, AJ Brown has had some sort of a knee sprain, and Devontae Smith seems unlikely to go. All of those players matter a ton for the Eagles, and I'm just not sure how the Eagles salvage their season considering the way things have gone for them over the last month. So this would be a fitting end, which would be being beaten by the lowly winner of the NFC South.
Yeah, absolutely. Judah, that Eagles defense that Drew touched on has been a disaster these last few weeks.
Yeah, real bad. I think kind of the game here is a tale of either the last 6 weeks for the Eagles versus the last year and a half, and the price is somewhere in between. Like, if we're just pricing the Eagles of the last 6 weeks, like, this is a bottom 5 team in the NFL. Like, they're absolutely dreadful. The Bucs should be massive favorites here, like 3.5 point favorites. If this is the Eagles team that we've known for the year and a half before that, then I think this game is mispriced, and the Eagles should be higher favorites. Which kind of leads me to wanting to play the tails here, because whatever this price is, it's not true in the sense of like a real value of where these teams are. It's somewhere in between kind of these two examples of the Eagles' recent form versus the kind of Eagles' larger sample size. To Drew's point, it is insane to me that we have no word on AJ Brown, have not heard a single thing. No idea what's going on with Devonta Smith. There's been no information leaking out. My just like kind of rule of thumb here is to trust the market, and I think the market's expecting them to play. But if those guys are ruled out, this price is the Bucs are going to be favorites, which maybe there's a case to be made that there's asymmetric risk in favor of the Bucs here. But ultimately, this is a game I want to play on the tails just because of kind of this central angle of like, what are the Eagles? Or is this the team of the past year and a half? Is this the team of the past 6 weeks? And I think I want to take shots on either side of that. It also just comes with this is not a good Bucs team. Like, they're really limping, as Drew said, they're really limping to the finish line. Baker Mayfield is not fully healthy. I'm not entirely sure they can take advantage of how bad the Eagles' pass defense is. That's really all up for question. And like, sure, we saw a bunch of Baker Mayfield spike weeks, but there have been every bit as many bad weeks as there have been good weeks. And there's a lot of uncertainty, and I'm going to play that uncertainty on the tails, but nothing that kind of wants me to bet a spread or a total here.
Okay, a lot thrown at you there. All these bets will be recapped on Matchbook Insights. Search Matchbook Insights or insights.matchbook.com. Best long shots time. Jude, I'll actually stick with you because you are looking to get the Rams on side at a favorable price. If you look at the alternative handicaps and bring it to -5.5, you're looking at a price somewhere in the region of 3.7. You think that's a value play here?
Yeah, I think kind of to just add on to what I was saying earlier about the Rams offense, which I think, and honestly, quite frankly, the Rams I think are better in every facet of the game. Or offense and defense. I don't think the rush offense is necessarily better than the Lions, but I think kind of the main play here is that if the Lions go down a bunch, this is an offense that I think loses a lot of its effectiveness. Without the threat of the run, I think that the Lions offense just kind of goes from a top 5 unit to really middle of the pack to below average. I mean, we've seen that in the past. We saw that in their game against the Packers most kind of poignantly on Thanksgiving. And that's what is making me comfortable backing the Rams at 5.5, which is I think the Rams are in every game script, whether they're up, they're down. I think this is an effective offense. I don't think we can say the same about the Lions. And if we get a Rams kind of playing from ahead, I think they can really kind of front run them, win by, quite frankly, multiple scores here. I think there are a lot of different kind of ways this game can play out where the Rams come out winning by 6 or more.
Okay, Gino, quite sweep on the Rams this week. Sam, you are quite sweep on the Cowboys and perhaps looking for a fun way of maybe if they are going to keep their front run, particularly what we saw a lot at the start of the season. This could be a play, I guess, at some point to lay 19.5 points.
Yeah, I think I joked about this I think it's the Commanders Thanksgiving, going for a stupidly high spread, and they ended up winning by 30 odd points, I think. But there's always one game, isn't there? There's one game that is an absolute blowout. And I think if there is one that I predict it to be, it's this one, because I think the Cowboys, they are the best front runners in the league. When they're ahead, they can just accelerate away. I think Judah basically said the same thing earlier. And they've won of their 8 home games that they've won, all of them, obviously. 6 of them have been by 20 or more points. The average result has been a win by 21.5 points. They have the ability to absolutely smoke the Packers. And for me, if I'm going to back one kind of wild long shot, I think this is the one that probably makes the most sense for me.
Okay, speaking of wild long shots, Drew, now round robins themselves aren't available in the UK and Ireland, but sort of there's options on the Matchup Betting Exchange to do, say, a lucky 63, which is every bet, essentially singles, doubles, all the way up to accumulator. There's Heinz 57. There's a lot of fun ways people can sort of bring in these long shots, but you basically sort of picked out your 6 money line, quote unquote, picks for the week. So maybe just take it away on the 6 and a little bit of thought.
I got a round robin parlay. I basically saying every dog is live except the Dolphins. Lucky 63, Houston, KC, Pitt, GB, Rams, TV. I think I played this. My total stake was like 2,500 to win 150K. So if you don't see me next week, it's because the Lucky 63 hit. I'm gonna take the week off. But I just think that these are going to be competitive games, except for the Dolphins because of their injury situation. And I promise I'm not being hopeful with Green Bay and the Rams and Tampa Bay winning, because like don't get me wrong, like just that half of this outcome would be like just dream scenario. Like, hey, we're going to send the Rams to Tampa Bay. And Green Bay, you go play San Francisco. Like that is about as ideal of a divisional weekend as I can possibly imagine, considering my futures portfolio. So yeah, whoever draws Tampa Bay, in my opinion, in a divisional round is probably the equity scoop right now for for futures.
Okay, one of the only betting exchanges in the UK and Ireland, you can do multiples. Lucky 63, Hines, have some fun with Drew's selections there. It'll be available on Matchbook Insights if you're struggling or trying to write it down. But the HOUKCPITGBLAORTB, that's the unlocking ways for the best long shots. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned Drew's long shot record: 9-6, up £338 for a £20 stake. Judah, you're also up to £161, 8-8. So well worth checking out the guys' best bets time. Sam, you made this case earlier on the Chiefs. Drew sort of alluded to the Dolphins' injuries, and you think Chiefs at -4 is the best bet of the card this weekend?
Yeah, I think there's a couple I'm quite confident on, but this is the one that I'm starting to. The more I think about it, I just can't see the way the Dolphins win. I think you got the injury situation, which is going to be key. The extra week's rest for the Chiefs, which again is going to be hugely important, and then. Yeah, finally the weather, I think, is going to be a serious issue. So for me, Chiefs -4, best bet by a mile. And I think, yeah, it's not often that the Chiefs kind of come in. It feels like they're almost a bit under the radar coming into the playoffs, as funny as that is to say. And I'm just going to try and take advantage of that here.
Okay, yeah, and we'll move to you, Drew. If you had to pick one of those one bet of the whole card this weekend, what is your best bet?
Yeah. Catching the hook with 7.5 and the Packers is where it's at for me. Again, like not a ton of difference between these two teams. Packers, the healthier offensive line, Packers, the more effective running game, and just in general, Packers being, a little bit underpriced here because it's potentially just because of the playoff debutante effect. Maybe, I don't know. I was surprised this moved from 7 to 7.5. I'll take it. So Green Bay plus 7.5 for me.
Okay, Judah, it seems a lifetime ago we were discussing the Texans and Browns, but that is your best bet.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it really is the Rams money line, but I can't go with the trifecta there, and I still do like the Texans a bunch. Yeah, I think if I go down swinging because Joe Flacco has turned into an elite quarterback, then so be it. I think the market has kind of meaningfully improved the Browns over the last bunch of weeks, and I don't think that's particularly warranted. I'm going to continue riding that CJ Stroud train until it leaves the station.
Yeah, no, I like it, lads. A lot of good picks, interesting plays, disagreement. We'll see who is right come Monday Night Football. My thanks to Judah, Sam, and Drew. Only 3 weeks to go. We will be back for the divisional rounds next weekend. It's going to be a fun one. But other than that, enjoy the weekend's football. Please do gamble responsibly and enjoy the weekend's football, as I touched on there. We'll chat to you next week. Bye-bye.